Hey, this is Bobby Shell here again today, and we're discussing part 3 in my series of the Morgan Housel book, Same as Ever. We're going to be breaking down why the gap between expectations and reality are what cause most of the unhappiness in our life, and some of the applications from the book that he discusses. At the end, we'll also be connecting to how this relates to Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and dive in. So the first rule of happiness is low expectations. Happiness depends on expectations more than anything else. One life skill everyone should try to develop is moving the goalposts less. As you make more, don't let lifestyle creep happen. Quit moving the goalposts as to the standards of how you live your life. Now, yes, you want to make some upgrades, but it's this goalpost moving that leads to a lot of problems for people, and we're going to dive into that. Things get better over time. Wealth increases, technology brings new efficiencies, and medicine saves lives. Expectations rise tremendously. All of this benefits others, and we anchor to other people's experiences and circumstances. There's a famous Charlie Munger quote that goes something like this: luxuries become necessities when other people around you become better off. The world isn't motivated by greed. It's motivated by envy. Now, this is so true. The 1950s are viewed as the golden age of prosperity, but there's some perspective that needs to be understood about the difference between the 1950s and now. Median hourly wages are higher than they were in the 50s, adjusted for inflation. Home ownership was 12% lower than it is today. The average home was 1/3 smaller than it is today. In the 1950s, food was 29% of budget. Today, it's 13% of a budget. Workplace deaths were 3 times higher in the 50s. Back then, everything was acceptable because everyone was in the same circumstance. Nowadays, there is a wide difference in earnings and what people have, material possessions. And granted, there is a money printing problem that needs to be fixed that Bitcoin addresses. I'm not going to be here to debate that just yet. We'll talk about that in another video, but these are key points Morgan raises. Back then, everyone had nearly the same lifestyle. Today, social media and the internet allows people to flaunt their lifestyle, hide the bad, and we have a really hard time accepting that reality is not what we see on the internet. There is tremendous social pressure to live beyond your means. What generates emotion is the gap between our expectations and the reality that we live in. And it begs to ask this question: why do we so much protect material things, but why do we not work so hard to protect our mental health and our bodies in general? At the end of the day, there's no price tag associated. We covet these things with price tags, but we don't do what it takes to protect ourselves. A lot of times we might choose to go out and eat at a restaurant. In reality, it's not very healthy versus cooking at home. We may choose to watch Netflix and do something and binge content online, or buy a brand new video game system and spend all this time playing video games versus working out, versus reading a book, versus doing something under the sun. We make all of these compromises that don't have dollar tags associated with them because we simply don't know how to quantify it. Now let's talk about how this relates to Bitcoin. One thing about Bitcoin and Austrian economics is there's this term called low time preference behavior. It's where you focus more on the future versus living in the now. Some folks may want to watch Netflix now and just binge television because they're tired. Others may say, I'm going to do the hard thing. I'm going to work out, or I'm going to read a book. It may not be as interesting in the first 5 minutes, but you do end up loving it and finding value. Low time preference behavior is valuing your future more than you value the now and not acting on these base level needs. So many folks leverage debt. They focus on these fiat behaviors and they do all these things to be of the world. Those things typically lead to an outcome a lot of Americans have, where they leverage tremendous amounts of debt to get where they want to be, and then that debt cripples them. There's garbage food, there's bad music, there's all kinds of things out there. And one thing is certain: once you question money and you understand how it's broken, you begin to question everything. Incentives are revealed, and you realize incentives drive behavior. And that's where so much corruption comes from, and so many bad incentives that lead to just terrible things that unfold in our society. Wealth and happiness are a two-part thing. Expectations are in our control. We must understand expectations. It's a mental game. At the end of the day, it's a game everyone's forced to play. You just need to understand that you're playing it. Focus on low time preference behavior. Do not get caught up in the way the world acts and thinks, and be individual. Build valuable skills, command a higher dollar value for doing them, and save and sound money. We're going to be breaking down every chapter of Morgan Housel's book. Some we'll skip over, but I'm going to be breaking down all of the most relevant ones that relate to Bitcoin, and I hope this has value for you. And if you enjoy, subscribe, listen, comment, share. It means a tremendous amount to me. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.